Yo, what is going on, everyone? It's your boy Big Yoshi, and today we're going to be talking about some early Silksong impressions and some parallels I've drawn with Silksong and kind of how I think it'll be perceived in the future. This video will have minor spoilers for Silksong. If you want to play it entirely, fully blind, then click off right now. Obviously, I don't think you'd be watching a Silksong video if you really cared, though. I'm not going to spoil anything major, just some small little things that I need to help the points that I'm going to be making. And for anyone who saw like the thumbnail and the title and thinks this is just going to be like a hate piece on Silksong, I'm sorry to disappoint you. It's not. When people see Dark Souls 2, they immediately think like I'm thinking it's bad. This video will contain talks about Hollow Knight 1, Silksong, Dark Souls 1, and Dark Souls 2. And spoiler alert for the time being, and I only say for the time being because I'm not fully done Silksong, but for the time being, I think all four of these games are absolutely amazing. And well, yes, there are things wrong with them. That's what we're going to talk about a little bit today, but it's not like I hate Silksong or I hate Dark Souls 2. Dark Souls 2, I love it. One of my favorite games of all time. Silksong is amazing so far, but there are things that are not amazing, and there are things that I think are going to be looked at differently by the people in the future. So let's just get right into like the juice of the video, but I just want to get that out of the way, that right at the beginning, by no means is this a I hate Silksong rant, and by no means is this just meant to be a negative thing. When I say Silksong is like the Dark Souls 2 of the series, that's not meant to be taken as it's infinitely worse or whatever. I'll explain what that means, but again, not Silksong hate video. Just gotta make that abundantly clear. So we'll get to what I mean with the title of the video in a sec, but just first off, as I said, kinda general Silksong impressions. The game is really good, but there is some problems I have with it. But for the most part, if you liked Hollow Knight 1, you'll like Silksong. I think there is a small amount of players where that won't entirely translate, but for the most part, if you've beaten Hollow Knight, you've done all the things, you're probably gonna enjoy Silksong for the most part, and heck, you're probably playing through it right now, right? As of the recording, I'm about into, I think, around 15 hours into my playthrough at the start of Act 2-ish, so just keep that in mind. If things get infinitely worse or infinitely better from the point that I'm at, I don't know that because I'm only about 15 hours in, but just so you know, for the perspective, that's about how far I'm into the game right now, and compare that to about where you are 15 hours into a Hollow Knight playthrough, and you'll kind of get to like where these opinions are coming from. So yes, Silksong is a good game. Yes, I've played it a decent amount so far. So what do I mean when I say that Silksong will end up being the Dark Souls 2 of the Hollow Knight franchise? So let me break it down by talking about what I like and don't like about the Dark Souls things. So like Dark Souls 1, I think is just like a generally better game than Dark Souls 2, but they're both amazing games, right? And so what I mean is the things that are making Silksong really fun for me right now are the things that made me have a lot of fun in Dark Souls 2, and that's that the crest system in Silksong I think is amazing and by far the best part of the game. Limiting like the red, blue, green things, kind of like how Night Rain does, is a little weird, but just the fact that you could have a bunch of different movesets and experiment like that, it gives me like how it was in Dark Souls 2 when they added power stancing. It's just like a new way to do things, and it's generally been really fun and one of the highlights of Silksong for me. I also like how they changed it just enough from the original to where it's different, but not the same. Even if some people might consider it a little bit worse, the new like moveset that Hornet has, well, it might not be as lovely as the Knight's was for some people. Just the fact that it's different, I like. I didn't want it to be a carbon copy of Hollow Knight, and I'm glad that it's not, even if like something like her downwards pogo, I think is probably worse than Hollow Knight's like straight down one, but you can change that with the crest system, which is amazing. And I just like the fact that baseline is different than Hollow Knight. So when I say that Silksong will be the Dark Souls 2, I mean the things that I like about it are the innovation and new like mechanics that it's added, and the things I don't like about it is enemy placement and runbacks. So literally the exact same as Dark Souls 2. I like Dark Souls 2 innovation, but the boss runbacks and enemy placement in that game is a little questionable, to say the very least. Silksong has a bunch of really cool new innovations. I already mentioned the crest system. The music playing thing to open a door and have certain NPCs react is really cool. The quest board is super cool, having multiple currencies to do things. There is a little bit of a problem with that, but I mean, in general, like the multi-use, having just like a bunch of different mechanics that they just threw in is really cool, and that's what's making Silksong very fun for me right now. And of course, there's like a new map, and like, I mean, just the Hollow Knight Metroidvania type thing is always done really well, and for the most part, the game just plays kind of smoothly. smoothly, right? But there is a lot of issues I have with Silksong, and as I said, like Dark Souls 2, enemy placement and runbacks are a big part of that. But before I get to just like what my nitpicks are, I want to say that I think Silksong will kind of end up being viewed like how Dark Souls 2 is now, but to a lesser extent. Like, I think more people will still end up preferring Hollow Knight, but I think there will be a crazy elite group that just like only one-trick Silksong and this is like their favorite game of all time until they're 90 years old. Like, I think it'll kind of be the same dynamic. I don't think Silksong will be looked at in the same like perfect light the original Hollow Knight was. Of course, they can always patch things, but let me start explaining more why I'm saying this. So the main thing you have to understand is Dark Souls 1 was a game of very high highs and very low lows, right? But the highs were so much better than the lows that that's what you remembered, and that's what makes that game great. The highs, the world design, and Orlando, crazy cool bosses like Artorias and Manus. The highs were really cool, but the lows in Dark Souls 1, I know some people still look at it with a little too much nostalgia, but like Izalith, the Tomb of the Giants, those places exist. So when Dark Souls 2 comes along, and it's fun in some areas, but then it has bad enemy placement, bad runbacks. It's not like you look back on Dark Souls 1 and think these things are like entirely unfounded or like where do they come from. You look back at Dark Souls 1, you remember the Tomb of the Giants, and then you go, yeah, you know what? I can see how Dark Souls 2 maybe has some bad enemy placement. It doesn't sound like a foreign concept at the very least. But the thing with Hollow Knight and Silksong is, Hollow Knight 1 was so beautifully refined, like it had S-tier movement, S-tier music, and everything else was just a solid A across the board. Nothing stuck out as being annoying or bad, and it was just such a consistent game that when Silksong starts having some lower lows and high highs, the lows just stick out like such a sore thumb because the original one, it was just polished all the way through from start to finish. So even if, and I'm sure there will be, Silksong ends with really high highs in the later acts I haven't got to yet, the lows just still stick out because they just kind of weren't there in the original Hollow Knight. And that's kind of why I feel like it's a bit of a disconnect from the Dark Souls series, because in Dark Souls 2, you look back at the lows of Dark Souls 1 and you go, okay, I can kind of see how they got here. But in Silksong, it's like, it just sticks out so much because there kind of were no crazy lows in the original Hollow Knight. So what are these lows? Let's start with, I think, the thing that it might be a bit more nitpicky. I'll start with the nitpicks and then get into the two main issues. So the first one, it might just be me, but I feel like you don't get enough of like the red beads or like the rosary currency or whatever it's called. It feels like Silksong's trying to do like a Resident Evil thing where like you always just barely have enough like money or currency to get the next upgrade, and it always feels like you're just skating by. But the thing with Resident Evil is if you are a couple thousand short of a weapon, a couple hundred short of a weapon, or like you just need one more thing for like a health upgrade, those are never gonna crazily impede your progress. You're never gonna be 200 coins short of a shotgun in Resident Evil and be like, oh, well, I gotta grind this 200 or else I'm just never beating the next area. That's not gonna happen in Resident Evil. But in Silksong, if you're 20 rosary beads short of a bench that you have to buy, bro, that's not a slight inconvenience. That's a damn, if I die or I don't come back here, that's like a minimum 4-minute snooze run back. Like, that's not it's not a small deal not getting like a bench or like a stag station in Silksong. It's a little bit more intense than that. So that's why I feel like the rosary economy is a little too stingy, but that might just be me. They are also kind of balancing drops between two currencies, which definitely could make it feel like the important currency is just dropping half the time, and it kind of does, I'm not gonna lie. And also, a lot of bosses don't give you the currency, which is really weird. Like, a lot of the bosses in Hollow Knight had like a big chest after them, or they just dropped a lot of geo, where in this game I feel like there's a lot of bosses I beat that they don't give me really any currency. So that might be part of it. I don't know. I feel like the economy is just a little too tight for a Metroidvania, I guess. One thing that I see a lot of people complain about is that early game enemies just shouldn't do 2 hearts of damage, which I kind of agree with, but I also think could be done well. I think enemy placement is the bigger culprit here, but the thing is, like, if you were able to get maybe a couple more masks early, like I just have 1 extra mask and I'm 15 hours in, by the way. Like, it's not like you really get that much, and you also don't get that much crazy like damage ups. And I feel like if you had that, enemies doing 2 masks of damage, like, wouldn't be that big of a deal. But it is just kind of annoying having a basic enemy do essentially half your health. I don't know. It makes it a lot more, it really feels like the devs just like expect you to have played Hollow Knight, which is fine. And I think that's I think like no one's gonna start, like, I think that's a good idea. Like Dark Souls 3 and Elden Ring were games that they were made to be entry points to the series. Like they had new players in mind. Whereas Dark Souls 2, I don't think did. I think Dark Souls 2 kind of expected you to have played the first Dark Souls. And I think Silksong kind of has expected you to play the first Hollow Knight. Another thing I want to make abundantly clear is that, is the game too hard? I don't think so. Again, I think enemy placement, and I'll go into that, is the biggest thing that's like annoying. I don't necessarily think the game is too hard. A lot of people have been saying that it's way harder than Hollow Knight, and on that point, I do agree. I think people saying that you just don't remember your first Hollow Knight playthrough and it was just as hard, I think those people are a little out of touch. I think I've died more in the first 6 hours of Silksong than I had through my entirety of my Hollow Knight's first campaign. And when I say campaign, I mean like Dirtmouth to Radiance Kill, not including like Grim Trooper Pantheons. But I think throughout my entirety of my Hollow Knight campaign, I've already died more in like the first 6 hours of Silksong. Maybe I'm just getting a little old, but I do think that Silksong is just harder, which isn't bad. It's a sequel. It's totally fine to be harder, and I don't think the game is too hard by any means, but I do think the enemy placement in this game, yeah, let's get into that real quick. The enemy placement in this game, especially for ones that can just true combo you into 2 hits of damage, is not okay, bro. It does, again, it feels like Dark Souls 2 in the way where instead of making enemies that are harder with unique movesets, or even enemies that are just kind of meant to be fodder on your way to the boss, bro, they just throw in like 4 enemies in a small area and call it like a challenge, which it's the same thing in Dark Souls. When you do stuff like that, it feels cheap, not hard, which is not what you're ever going for. There's a lot of flying enemies that throw things at you in combination, but I think the biggest culprit in these games is the combination of these enemies with the platforming. Now, for those of you who don't know, Silksong has taken a different approach to platforming than Hollow Knight did. The platforming is a lot harder, a lot more strict, but I think that's a good thing, and that's actually something that I wanted from Silksong. I think the platforming segments should be harder in some areas. I did think it would take a little bit longer for it to scale up, but again, I'm fine with that. I actually wanted the platforming to be harder. The problem is when you take the harder platforming and then combined it with like 3 floating enemies in the middle of all the jumps. That is not okay, and I think that is just bad design, especially when some of the floating enemies can just true combo you for 2 hits of damage, and then you fall into a hazard that does another 2 hits of damage, and then you're on 1 health and have to deal with the healing system. It's not a good combo, and it leads to a lot of frustrating things. Like I think they really need to do either enemy part or platforming part, kind of how like almost like Devil May Cry does, like here's your enemy phase, here's your puzzles, and then they go back and forth. Resident Evil, same thing. Here's your puzzle phase, here's your phase with a bit more enemies, and it goes back and forth. Having harder platforming, you can't mix with a bunch of enemies that do 2 hearts of health. Like in Hollow Knight, they could do their platforming with their enemies a lot more, because a lot of the time in Hollow Knight, the enemies were either very, very particularly laid out to be used as part of the platforming, or the enemies are just like fodder guys that die in 2 to 3 hits, so you can throw them in there and it's really no big deal. In Silksong, enemies are way too tanky, bro. It's like 8 to 9 hits, and I'm using Reaper stance, by the way, which I think does more damage. So like they are sponges in this game, which is really annoying, especially when they can do half your health and there's like 3 of them while you're trying to do platforming. That's kind of the main issue I have, and this gets dragged out a lot more in the later areas of Silksong, especially the end 2 areas of Act 1. I don't know how I'm feeling about hazards doing 2 masks of damage sometimes. I think, again, it would be fine, but the gameplay doesn't really lend itself to that. You have enemies that can do 2 masks of damage, and then you can fall into 2 masks of damage hazards, so that never feels good. And then a big culprit is when they have like moving spikes you have to bounce off of, but you'll land in a hazard that does 2 masks of damage. There's a certain section that I'm going to talk about in a little bit where you have to do platforming on these little spikes, and you only, like, it's a really long run back, and you only have your 5 masks, assuming you got there at full health, right? So you have your 5 masks, and they expect those 5 masks to be enough for the platforming section. But the thing is, you mess up, you hit the thing you were trying to bounce off of, 1 mask, fall into the hazard, 2, and then like you've messed up once, but you've taken 3 hits of damage. So like it doesn't feel right. You know what I mean? Like there's a lot of times, or like you really, it's a long run back, an enemy hits you, 2 masks of damage, fall into a pit, 2 masks of damage, respawn, now you're surrounded by a bunch of dudes and you can't heal because the healing system's a little jank. It just doesn't feel as smooth, bro. And again, these are semi-nitpicky, but they just stick out so much more because of how polished the original Hollow Knight was. And I don't know, I feel like enemy placement and enemy health is just severely out of whack, bro. If you ask any Souls player, the one thing that's annoying, like even the people that are new in Elden Ring, bro, what's bad about not Forest of the Giants, what's bad about Mountaintop of the Giants in Elden Ring? That there's literally no reason to engage with any of the enemies there because they're all a billion HP and insta-kill you and they drop absolutely nothing. That's how the later enemies in Act 1 feel, and that's so bad. Never do that, developers. Never do that. It's not even like a terrible thing in general. It just feels bad, which sucks because it doesn't have to be like that, right? And then by far the biggest culprit, and the one thing that I'm not gonna lie has made me a little angry in Silksong so far, these runbacks, bro. I don't know who placed these benches, but we need either more of them or they need to be put in like not the like scientifically worst location possible, bro. These runbacks are egregiously bad. The 2 that come to mind, let me go over this for you. So the one that's really bad, the left side of the map to the Act 1 or the final boss of Act 1 on the left side, because there's 2 different ways you can finish Act 1 for those of you who don't know, but the one on the left side, bro, the run up is not it. And again, it comes down to bad enemy placement. Having to do a parkour section as a run back is already a little weird, but then filling the parkour section with 6 flying dudes that also have projectiles that also true combo you into 2 hearts of damage, that also push you into hazards that do 2 damage. I'm hyping it up a little bit, but like it's not fun is the problem. Again, I don't think the game's too hard. I just think the enemy placement is a little much at points, bro. It is a atrocious run back. But even worse, the most egregious example of this so far, and if you've been here, you know, bro. There's an elevator, and I think it's called Greymoor or whatever, the kind of graveyard looking place at the top right. There's an elevator you can take up that leads you to an area called Sinner's Road. And bro, I don't know who cooked this one up. You have to take a long elevator, and let's just say it is a long run through this area, bro. It is an arduous journey, if you will, bro. It is not fun. The enemies in this area are really bad, and there are a lot of them. They are damage sponges. They fly at you from all angles. They hover above you. The enemy placement in this area is really bad. A lot of things do 2 hearts of damage, and again, at this point, you still pretty much have your base health. It is a very, very obnoxious area, to say the least. Every time you die in this area, you have to spawn at the little bar in Greymoor, take the elevator up, go back through the place, through the first area, through the second area, and then all the way up through a bunch of enemies, and then you can get to where you want to go. And it is like a 3-minute run back every time. And again, these enemies are no joke, bro. So you think they would put a bench there, right? Well, kind of. You find a bench, but get this, it's fucking broken, by the way. So I'll tell you what happened. I found the bench. It was broken. Like the mechanism was clogged or something. And I kept trying to progress through the area, bro. I think around 15 to 20 times did I die, run up, take an elevator, parkour all the way back through these billion enemies. Bro, it was a rough time. Eventually, I started thinking that like I have to be missing something with this bench, bro. Like this broken one, because there's no way the developers play tested this and went, yeah, this is fine, right? So get this, okay? This broken bench, you can fix it. Guess what? Guess what you have to do? Guess what you have to do? And this is coming from someone who went back to explore. There is a fully flat wall on the left side of this bench that you can jump up. And jumping up this wall takes you to nothing. It takes you to the ceiling. When you jump on this wall, there is no indication. There's no cracks. There is nothing, bro. It is a normal wall that you jump up, that like in any other room you would find in this game. But for some reason, if you hit the top left of the wall with your nail, it will break open. This is, again, is not telegraphed. If you didn't know about this, bro, I am here to save you. You can break open the top left wall of this room with absolutely no indication other than the bench is broken and maybe the solution's somewhere around. Finally, 20 attempts later, I'm molding, I go back, I break this open. What do we have, bro? Is it just a switch that then fixes the bench for you? No, it's a full platforming section. You remember how the bench was broken so you couldn't full heal before it with all the billion enemies? That was a thing. And then you have to go through this full platforming section. But this is where I was saying earlier that you have 5 masks to get through it. But if you mess up, you dink off the thing you're supposed to bounce off of, dink into the floor, dink into 2 different things. You don't actually have 5 attempts. And you have to go through this full platforming section just to repair the bench, which you probably didn't even find in the first place. Like, bro, this game is so good, but there's so many dumb decisions like this that it's, I feel like I'm like negative ranting now, and I kind of am. But bro, I cannot explain to you how egregious these runbacks are. And if there's one thing that makes me angry in Souls games, bro, it's runbacks that are just wasting time. Even as you can see, no one else liked that, so Elden Ring added Stakes of Baraka, so this wasn't a thing. Bro, I don't know how you could put a broken bench in like the most dumb area of the game, hide the place to fix it, and then even if you find it, add like a fucking parkour section that if you mess up like twice, you just have to take another like 4-minute run back, bro. I don't know. So is Hollow Knight Silksong a good game? Am I enjoying it? Yes, bro. Yes, I am. But again, like Dark Souls 2, there's way too bad enemy placement and way too crazy runbacks, and I think it's really gonna hurt the initial reception. Although, to be fair, there's like 500,000 players and a lot of positive reviews, but if you look already, Hollow Knight has overwhelmingly positive, Silksong is very positive, and I think there is gonna be a discrepancy there, bro. Again, it's an amazing game. I fucking love Team Cherry, bro. I would buy this game. I can't believe they priced it so low. It's so generous. Like, it's an amazing game, and I'm having a blast. These are just kind of nitpicks because I want the thing I love to be perfect, not slightly flawed. And bro, this is like, these runbacks are not okay, man. That is my main complaint. Like, fucking 10-year run back into broken bench, into you just have to guess that this wall is destructible, into then break it into a parkour course. It's a little dank, bro. I'm not gonna lie. I feel like, and this is from someone, by the way, like, to put it into perspective, the most I did in Hollow Knight was beat Pantheon 5, which I felt like that was like the natural endpoint. It was like the hardest piece of content in the game. I never did Steel Soul. I never did like any of the modded challenges, and I know a lot of people did. And I don't want to say they're balancing around those players because they're not, but I feel like they saw their community go off in Hollow Knight, and they're like, damn, bro, if we don't compensate with all the crazy movement we've given them, like, people are just gonna run rampant on this game. And it's like, well, kinda yes, but at the same time, like, make it hard, not tedious, is the main takeaway here. And yes, I do think Silksong will be like Dark Souls 2. I think it'll be looked at as less perfect than the one that came before it, but there will be some people that absolutely fall in love with it, and it will be their favorite game of all time. 100%, I think it'll have that kind of parallel to Dark Souls 2. Obviously, a lot of people just like dog on Dark Souls 2 for no reason, and I don't think that will happen to Silksong, but I just hope that these small inconveniences can, the enemy placement is is an annoying inconvenience. The runbacks, yeah, they're a little dank, bro. I'm not gonna lie. But like, again, the game, bro, crest system, amazing. Gameplay so smooth. Graphics somehow better. I didn't think like the 2D graphics get that much better, bro. This game is so pretty, by the way. Love the secrets, love like everything about it. It's more Hollow Knight, bro, which is good. But these little things, these gotta be ironed out, bro. And I do think, here's the hot take for the end of the video, bro. And it makes perfect sense when you say it with the Dark Souls series, but I feel like people will be mad if I say it with this one. If Silksong was the first game to release, I don't think the series would have been skyrocketed to the same success. Same thing in Dark Souls. If Dark Souls 2 released before 1, I don't think it would have been as big as it is today. And that is a hot take. That is definitely a hot take. A lot of people will just say Silksong is better in a lot of ways, and it is. It totally is. But I think releasing like the game that's consistent instead of the one with higher highs and lower lows will always just be a better idea, especially when first. And I'm not even sure Silksong has those higher highs yet, by the way. I'm just assuming. I have faith in Team Cherry. I'm assuming it will towards the end game, just like Hollow Knight did. But as of right now, my nitpicks are, yeah, runbacks are ridiculous and enemy placement is unfavorable to the player, to say the least. But again, yeah, the game is really good. If you liked Hollow Knight, you'll like Silksong. Let me know if you can kind of resonate with what I'm saying, or if it's just like a, I don't know, just get good issue, bro. I'm getting too old, I guess. I gotta lock it again or something like that. But yeah, overall, again, yeah, game's really good. It's super cheap, so I mean, like, I feel like I'm scamming them, honestly. Like, I think I still can't believe they priced it that low, and like when it was the most anticipated game, like other than GTA 6, like that's really, really good. Thank you for doing that. Great game. Those are my nitpicks. That's how I think the game, that's my hot take for how it'll be seen in the future. Hope you guys enjoyed. Hope you're all enjoying Silksong. Let me know how your guys' game's going. I've been having a pretty fun time, other than running back to the Sinner's Road or whatever, but that's it for me. Have a good night.